Good morning, good morning, good morning, and good morning. Sorry for the momentary delay in starting. Was having a hard time getting Facebook to go live there. They constantly change things, and so for those of us who are self-producing and producing on a smaller budget, it gets a little weird when you're trying to do things the same week to week, and then the folks at Facebook or at YouTube or at Twitter change everything on you all of a sudden. At any rate, welcome to another fine Wednesday morning here in the city of Philadelphia. Welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Thief Productions. We've got a great show for you today. We've got mayoral candidate David O., Republican candidate for Philadelphia mayor. We're going to be talking voting rights, progressives, city council, national issues, and local response. I will get him on the screen in a moment. We also have regular guest Timothy Reimer, who might be jumping in with some commentary here and there. Let me get this set up. Oh, there we go. We're going to talk a little bit about the protests and looting last night. Talk a little bit about what that all means, and talk about general questions for the candidate, and his thoughts on things as we enter the actual active part of the campaign. Without further ado, let me bring David on the screen. Welcome, David, to the show again. I've had you on before. Please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
All right. Good morning, James. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on your show. I've been here before. My name's David O. I am a he and a him. Well, I'm unemployed right now. I have no job. I'm proud to say that. When I was on city council, I only had one job. That was being a city council member. And now, that I have resigned my position, I resigned on February 13th. I spend my full time campaigning for mayor. I think it's very important. And so I will do that until November 7th, when the election is held.
So what are you looking forward to with this campaign? We've seen those of us who are terminally online, who are really interested in Philadelphia politics, those of us who spend a lot of time on Twitter, X, whatever Elon Musk wants to call it this week. We've seen, you out there campaigning in social media. We've seen, policies posted by you. And we've seen a little bit of, back and forth between you and Cheryl Parker, the Democratic candidate for mayor, about whether there will be debates, how many debates, and we've also seen kind of a low-key campaign from candidate Parker. What are you looking forward to in this campaign? What would you say are the important things, about this campaign in the city of Philadelphia?
Well, I think the important thing is that people have a choice. And let me start with this. If I were not a candidate, there would not be a choice, because your choice would be Cheryl Parker. Because the winner of the Democratic primary back in May 16th would be your only candidate on the ballot. And so, yeah, you can choose not to vote for her, but as long as she votes for herself, she wins. And I think that's the problem. In other words, people should have a choice, because you can't manufacture a choice. It's like a menu. If on the menu is there vanilla ice cream, that's all you get, unless there's something else on the menu. And the something else should not be a shade of vanilla. It should be chocolate. It should be something quite different. And there may be something you want, but at least you have two choices. So in Philadelphia, people have not really had a choice, because for the last 20 years, The winner of the Democratic primary is pretty much the winner because there is no credible opposition offering the voters a different perspective on what the future should be and how we should respond. The reason I resigned is because I personally believe we're at a really critical juncture in this city. And I think we're hitting the point of no return. If we don't go about face or do something dramatically different than what we've been doing, I think we're just heading down, the very steep part of the slope that you can't really get back to the top of the hill again. So first, you have a choice. So what are those choices? And that's where we run into this interesting problem that, one of the reasons I ran is that I was thinking that in the Democratic primary, it's going to be a super crowded field, not 3 or 4 candidates, like a lot of candidates. And the problem with a lot of candidates is that you have, 10 or 11 people on stage. You're asked the same questions over and over again. We know what the questions are. How are you going to deal with crime? How are you going to deal with affordable housing? How are you going to deal with poverty and homelessness? How are you going to deal with all public education reform, things like that? But with 10 or 11 people on stage, you get about like a 90-second answer.
Right. Yeah.
And so,
You don't get nice big forums to really expand
yes.
on things. I'd love to delve into this a little bit.
Mhm.
And give us some time to explore some of these topics. And really explore what you're talking about. Having a choice, having another candidate, a viable candidate for mayor, other than just a Democratic candidate. One of the first things I wanted to touch on, I've talked with you many times. I think that's the first time I met you was when I was walking around City Hall one day, looking for council members to support an arts initiative that I was working on.
Right.
And during your career as a city council member, you were known for supporting the arts, and you are in fact one of the first city council members that I ever spoke with that understood intrinsically the value of the arts community to the economy of the city of Philadelphia, and therefore also the tax base of the city of Philadelphia and its ability to operate as a city. You seem to have an actual plan, an economic plan, and it does involve the arts. I'd appreciate some detail about that. Your campaign website talks a lot about the primary interests of Philadelphia voters, and we'll get into all of those. But first and foremost, this show was started because I'm an artist. I'm in theater. I'm in live arts. I'm in photography. I'm in broadcast. So these are things that are very important to me. I hosted 2 24-hour rallies for the arts and tried to get the city council to really fund the arts because it's that important, at least in my opinion. What as a mayor would you do to bolster the arts, support the arts, fund the arts? How high of a priority is that to you? Or is it something that is just a priority to somebody like me?
Well, it's a priority for our city, to address in a more substantial way the problems of this city, starting with gun violence, murder, and all the other issues that we have, right? We have to immediately stop the violence. We have to stop the fear. We have to do that. But you cannot sustain that over a long period of time without dealing with, obviously, what is driving people to become killers, what is driving people to commit violence upon other people. The fundamental things like good schools and good community centers and good jobs and things like that are important. But we only have certain really big economic engines that we can pursue, several, right? One of them is the creative arts economy, arts and culture. And it is a very important economic engine. And I say that, based on objective numbers for your viewers. Prior to the pandemic, $3.4 billion of economic impact annually, $920 million in household income. Super important to me to see that people have money in their pockets, money to do things at home. But then they produced $157 million in local taxes. That's a lot of revenue to address a lot of the issues that we need. We are faced with a declining economy. People are moving out of our city. It's having a tremendous impact on our city because the people who are leaving are people who actually pay taxes, like real estate taxes and things like that. And as they're leaving, our tax base is declining, which means what? We're going to have less and less services, which are right now inadequate. And there's a temptation by government, which I have fought against, but this temptation is to overtax people. And the people who end up paying that tax are the most vulnerable people in our city. So when you look at the property tax, for example, it is concentrated in the poorest, most violent neighborhoods of our city, where the property tax is grossly, their homes overassessed to the extent they cannot pay for it. And now they're being pushed out of their homes and out of their communities. And that begins a whole nother cycle. So what happens? Violence, depression, domestic abuse, all kind of things happen, because of that. So,
not to interrupt, but just to talk about a thing that you brought up there: city services, infrastructure. That's actually the bottom end of what we're going to talk about today. Not bottom end in importance, in my opinion, but bottom end in importance in a recent poll of voters. It's the lowest of the top top six things that voters identified as critical problems that they wanted addressed. We're talking bike lanes, we're talking Vision Zero, we're talking wheelie kids, we're talking potholes, availability of internet, parking, the whole nine yards. One thing important to me, access and use of the Delaware River, the classification of the Delaware River as a primary contact source instead of a secondary contact source. Right. So how do you affect all these things without spending a lot of money? One of the things that we've always talked about, you and I have talked about in the past, is that the city of Philadelphia can't spend more than it takes in. It's not like the federal government where you can just borrow money. The city of Philadelphia can't actually borrow money; it has to spend what it takes in taxes. So how do we implement these, what is often classified as quote unquote quality of life issues, and improve them across the city, especially in those poorest neighborhoods, if we don't have the tax base to affect them in a monetary way?
Yeah, so going back to your original question, which is a way to address all of these things, is arts and culture, the creative arts economy. In other words, it's grossly undervalued and underfunded in our city. So from the numbers I just gave, 3.4 billion of economic impact, that is not a static number. In other words, that's not the ceiling. Some economic engines or some industries, you hit a certain ceiling, that's kind of the maximum you're going to do in Philadelphia. But on a global basis, the arts economy, that is something that has a much, much, much higher ceiling and something that we can do. And it matches us as a city in terms of population. So I like to say, whether you're a rich kid or a poor kid, the arts economy has something for you. And it begins with this: who you are, who you want to be, who you aspire to be. And so we have a lot of people in creative spaces, innovative spaces, whether it's in the support side of things, or the like audio engineering and all of that, or holding a microphone related to filmmaking, or the actual screenwriters, songwriters, musicians, actors, whomever. We have a lot of people in this space, and it's something that they really enjoy doing, and they find that they're talented in it. But like all things, you got to hone your talent. And the best way to do it is by doing it, right? In other words, who's Michael Jordan without a basketball? You got to get on the court. You got to be able to play the game in order to really develop your skills and ability. If you cannot do that in Philadelphia, if you cannot survive in Philadelphia, if you cannot grow in Philadelphia, if you can't feed yourself in Philadelphia, either you stop doing it, you do something completely different for the money, and then you're not happy, and then you're not fulfilled, and then you don't look forward to things like for yourself, right? Or you go to a completely different place where it's more inviting, it's more supportive, and then you bring all that talent, ability, and all your positivity, because everyone who does this, brings a level of positivity. And I say that understanding that we have people that have some very bad experiences. They've gone through great difficulties. But when they start to express themselves, when they start to communicate, when they start to, kind of put their feelings and their perspectives into song, or into words, or into paintings, that is a very, very impactful and positive thing. That's why people love it. That's why they're better for it. And so, the shocking thing about our city to me is how we disrespect it. For a city known for arts and culture, I mean, our puny, arts budget in the city, which basically consists of funding like the Philadelphia Cultural Fund, or, now Illuminate the Arts, is really coming out of about $4.2 million, including the office itself. So it's really like 3.2 million, which is really handed out in small grants. So you're not really going to generate anything sustainable. And then the rest of it goes into funding like certain performance spaces, but it's really not a robust fund. And as you know, I wanted to take part of the 1.4 billion dollar federal economic stimulus money and actually put it into stimulating the economy, getting jobs back, in the creative arts spaces, because that was the most impacted by the pandemic. And so creating a $45 million creative arts economy fund would be something that would allow us to really, in a very meaningful way, try to attract fashion to Philadelphia, to convert warehouse spaces, to create incubators, to help entrepreneurs, because I don't want to only focus on nonprofit. Yes, we will help nonprofit. Yes, we will deal with schools and universities, but we need for people to be force multipliers, to get that money and then end up hiring 50 people, doing those type of things, growing the economy. And so my goal as mayor is to create this $45 million arts fund, a creative arts fund, managed by respected member of the arts community. I like to remove politicians and politics from all of these type of efforts, because I just feel that while certainly elected officials and others are important representatives, when it comes to actual management and valuing, we need people who actually do this and are advocates, because they love what they do, and there's no like conflict of interest there in terms of trying to get votes or things like that. And unfortunately, so the history of Philadelphia, and I'll go back into a little bit of history because it's important. The reason they created the Philadelphia Cultural Fund is because elected officials who distributed money to the arts community, were doing it based on what they got in return politically. And so it's just a form of corruption that eventually, in order to address that, they said, look, put all the money into the Philadelphia Cultural Fund, where there will be a board of people, there will be very transparent process, applications, and public awarding of the grants. And we've gotten away from that. And so when it comes to awarding grants, yes, we'll keep the Philadelphia Cultural Fund, up to $15,000 in grants, things like that. be more, I keep saying robust, but I think that is the best word that comes to mind. Like in our schools, in our public schools, like that is something that is not like a extraneous thing. That is about character development, and it is going towards not only developing the person but their future, whether they're an architect or an attorney or a musician. This is something that is fundamental to how our economy is shifting on a global basis. So, as mayor, I will fund the arts. And then we look at Chicago. They did a $60 million arts recovery fund after Chicago. The arts community was really hard hit. And when we look at New York City, who's their benefit from the arts economy is tremendous. Television, filmmaking, all that. It's in the billions. And so their fund is like typically $200 million. Again, we're like 4.2 million. It is grossly
Yeah,
underfunded.
it's less than 0.2%, and I've always been a proponent of,
Yeah.
let's increase the percentage of arts funding. Like let's get up to 2%, like 2% of the budget.
Yes.
So
So the
what?
upside, as you know, is so strong, and then as you know, it has been so difficult. In other, not just difficult, it's been impossible. The mayor zeroed out the arts budget, which is ridiculous. Like, what mayor of a major city or even a small town zeroes their arts budget, and then trying to get this thing passed? And I end up fighting with my council colleagues, but the upside is clearly there. An investment in the arts economy will return to our city, tremendously in every direction.
So I wanna pivot just a little bit on that. Councilmember Isaiah Thomas, relatively a freshman to the council. He's going to be joined by a lot of freshman council members as soon as this election happens. And I'm curious. Isaiah Thomas, very into the arts, very into nightlife. Created the Arts and Culture Task Force. Really supported a couple of the members of the Arts and Culture Task Force who are interested in optimizing the economy of Philadelphia for nightlife. And there's areas where you agree with him. There's areas where you agree with progressives like Kendra Brooks. I've seen your positions on housing, on funding, homelessness, on solving the opioid crisis. There's areas where you agree with a lot of different existing council members and presumed elected council members because they're Democrats and or working family parties members, and they're probably going to be elected. But even in your time in council, it seemed to be, as you just mentioned, difficult sometimes to work with your fellow council members because they would reject out of hand proposals because you have an R behind your name. How, as a mayor, do you work with a city council that's somewhat? I don't know. I have this question for your opponent as well, for Sherelle Parker. How do you step into the mayorship and then work with a council that just really doesn't like working with the mayor's office, it seems like?
Yeah, it's interesting because we've had councils that worked very well with the mayor. For example, John Street, when he was council president, he really ruled council with an iron fist, and he and Ed Rendell had a very productive partnership. And so council pretty much worked well with Mayor Rendell. And we've had councils that really, were very much in disagreement with the mayor. And then we've had a variety in between. So first of all, the mayor of Philadelphia, by charter, our governing document, is a strong mayor position. So the mayor has tremendous power. I think at least for me, one of the problems, because it's not always a problem, like working together is not necessarily a problem unless you're in need of reform. And the working together is like a very entrenched type of collusion, which I would say another word for corruption, basically. Like, in other words, you're not putting the public interest first. You're putting a lot of layers of political interest first. You don't want to upset your political colleagues, your political system, your political machine. And then working together becomes problematic. So for me, if I were mayor, I would not have a problem with council because I'm a strong mayor. The council can deal with the budget, but they can't spend the money. The money comes from me, and I will give them the money they need because I'm not punishing any council member. I'm not fighting with any council member to the extent they represent the public interest. And, they were elected by the people of this city, the same as I would be. And therefore, I want to work together with them. But I am a reform mayor. In other words, I'm coming in to clean house. I have, in my time on city council, as you said, seen a lot of things and had a lot of disagreements that were not based on the substance of things. It was just based on things like I got an R behind my name. Like, you can vote against my bill, but you didn't introduce a bill at all. You talked about how important it was to do, and then you did nothing about it. Let's take minimum force training. Training the police not to overreact or to misinterpret circumstances and end up shooting someone. I have been a strong advocate for minimum force training for police, mandatory minimum force training. It's not really a kind of a crazy idea. It is well documented, well supported in law enforcement and the military. You cannot only train people, to use muscle memory to shoot someone. You have to train them to restrain themselves and to understand how to deal with conflicts that don't require, somebody being shot. But if you don't train them, that is the employer's fault. That's your fault. So why is it that I can't get anything passed when people are saying this is what we need? And if they don't like my resolution, why don't you do one of your own? But they have not done that. And so that's where I believe that is just partisanship. It is counterproductive to the public. Look, if they don't want to do it because they don't want to get the pushback from one side of the argument. If they did it, they might get pushed back from that side. If they, so it's status quo. Nothing is really happening. Same thing with reimbursing public school teachers, right? If they spend money out of their pocket, and I have an independent source of money, a tobacco settlement money that we're going to lose anyway, $10 million. Why not create a fund to reimburse, teachers because they're purchasing required school items? They're not asking for grants. They're looking to have things in their classroom that the school is not providing. Why does that get defeated? And I could go on and on. All these things defeated, but the people who voted against it did not introduce a version of that bill or that resolution themselves. It's just left blank. And so as mayor, I'm doing these things. And I know that the council members do not want to publicly oppose these things. They may table it or vote against it since I'm on a council member and there's 17 of us and I'm just, one out of 17. So I might have a couple of colleagues support me, but I'm going to lose overall, as you said, mostly around for partisan reasons. But as mayor, I'm the executive and I'm going to go ahead and do the things that are within my executive power. I respect the council, but in the back and forth of council is dependent, each individual council is dependent on the mayor for what they get, and I will do that. So I'm in a completely different boat. I am not looking to necessarily have a great day with everybody on council or anywhere else in the government. I'm looking to clean house. I think there's a lot of reforms that need to happen. I think, when you look at our schools, when you look at our affordable housing processes and policies, when you look at public transportation, which is not directly under the mayor, but can be tremendously impacted by the mayor, I think, from a Department of Human Services and every other thing, that we need to reform this government, make it far more transparent. I'd say it's pretty opaque. And once it becomes transparent, you will have a level of accountability, and accountability will produce responsiveness for a better city.
So in your response there, you mentioned a couple of things that I find interesting. When we're talking about efforts, proposals that you've made that are very similar to or aligned with the overarching goals of other council members of some members of the Philadelphia voting bloc. We talk about the opioid crisis. We can talk about policing in general. Both you and Sherelle Parker's proposals on safety, you call it, she calls it a crime reduction plan, you call it a safety plan. They both, call out people like me, who, are very pro defund the police. I find it problematic that our police department is policing in general, and our police department is over half of our city budget. Why are we dumping more and more money into something that hasn't worked? And in the time that we've dumped more money into it, it started working less well. In my personal opinion, that's because it's the most expensive hammer problem. I work in the arts, like I said. I build things. When I buy a new tool and it's really expensive, I look for ways, not consciously, but I look for ways to use that tool. We use our police for way too much stuff. Yes, minimum force training would be great. It would solve problems, hopefully solve problems. It wouldn't 100% of the time, but hopefully solve problems like Mark Dial. Mark Dial shot a man who wasn't in any way possibly threatening his life. He shouldn't have even been, Officer Dial shouldn't have been standing where he was standing. There was no reason for him to end a traffic pursuit by standing with a gun leveled at the driver's side window and windshield of the person who is pursuing. There's just no reason for that. There's literally, I don't know if it's still the policy, but several years ago we had a no pursuit policy in the city of Philadelphia. Why? Pursue somebody. If you have their license plate, if you have a description of their car, you can issue them a ticket. You know where they live. You can pull them over later when things are less tense. Why did Officer Dial end up at the driver's side window of somebody driving a car the wrong way down a one-way street and then end up shooting him? I would assume minimum force training would teach him, hey, stand back by your car, count to 10, really assess the situation, determine if you're in danger, and would also, let him not be in danger because he's standing away from the possible danger. It's a good thing on both sides of this equation. People don't get killed, and then officers also don't get killed. So I'm all for minimum force training, but why do we have to spend more money to do that minimum force training? Why, we didn't pay. Both you and Sherelle Parker in your safety plans note that we did not pay 150 officers last year or the year before. That money rolls over, is still in the police budget, and that you both want to hire up to 150 new officers, making a total of 300 additional officers on the beat. You both say very similar things about all of this, that, minimum force training, on Sherelle Parker's side, it's community policing, and enforcement of minor crimes. I'm not sure you and I could ever agree on that, but I represent the progressives that resoundingly lost during the Democratic primary. So how?
No, not resoundingly lost. The vote was split. The vote was split.
Well, I mean, even if you count up all of the progressive vote, it did not impact the machine vote, which you mentioned. You know, not angering the machine. The machine vote was, you know, what went for Sherelle Parker.
Yeah.
And you know, the old style. Hey, let me get, you know, a bunch of ward leaders on my side, and they will issue sample ballots to their constituency, and that's who they'll vote for.
Yeah. Right.
That's how politics goes in Philadelphia. That's why I could never run for city council, because I wouldn't get any ward leaders on my side. Nobody likes me that much.
No, I don't get it either.
But so how do you know, like, how do we address this? You know, like, of the two candidates for mayor, there's
Yeah.
only one policy being proposed.
Well, there really isn't only one policy. There's two different ideas, although, and that's part of why debates are important, because anyone can say anything. I could say I'm a lifelong lover of vanilla ice cream until you look at my past, and every time you see a picture of me, I'm with chocolate ice cream, and I openly talk about how much I hate vanilla, right? In other words, the campaign is a time where people say things because they figure out, hey, I'm going to get more applause and more votes if I say this. The question is, do they really mean it? Like, if they didn't say it when things were tough, if they said something completely different when things were tough or when it was popular, how do you know what they're saying is true now? In other words, what is their real ideas, and what are they just going to flip flop around? Because you would have supported the fact that Sherelle Parker signed the defund the police letter, and that's what it was called. We can say it was not too, but it came right on the heels of defund the police, when people were upset that the police budget was so large and not being cut, and council came out with a letter saying we're not going to honor the request by the mayor to put $14 million into the police budget. I did not sign that letter simply because I don't like to cut something that I don't know what we're cutting. There wasn't a indication. Are we cutting, the training for the police? Are we cutting minimum force train? We don't have the minimum force training, but are we de-escalation? Are we cutting, like, the police cadet program? Like, what are we cutting? If you just cut 14 million and you don't say what you're cutting, then you're just
I mean, it wasn't a
people.
cut of 14 million. It was just
It was
not
a cut. It
providing an
was
extra
no,
14 million.
listen. If your boss says to me, here's my proposal for James's salary, he's getting a $10,000 increase, and I say, nope, I reject that. Yeah, I could say, hey, man, I didn't do anything to you. I just didn't increase you. No, it's a proposal from the mayor that is normally granted, which it is unusual not to grant. And then on top of it, you put a letter.
I mean,
It's the
okay,
same thing.
all right, great. Let's say it is a cut. Then we gave that 14 million to the police department anyway in the next 6 months.
Well, then that's worse, isn't it? Because now you're
I
telling
think so.
people,
Yes.
yeah, I think you're dishonest. See what I'm saying? It's pandering. You say you're cutting, but you don't really cut. You send it in the back door. So you're getting credit in the newspaper for taking a stand against the police budget, but you actually let the money slide in a way people can't see. Isn't that worse? So my point is, during the campaign, she said she didn't do it, and there was a vote to reduce the proposed police budget by 33 million. And I didn't vote for that either. But later, what came up is, after the Walter Wallace shooting, the family and people said, why don't these police officers have tasers? And so there was additional money put in to purchase tasers, because people were shocked to find out that some police have tasers and some don't. Well, I voted for the tasers, right? Because police should have tasers as an option. It's not a perfect option, but it's an option, right? And so we have tasers. But some council members who were for tasers voted against tasers because they did not want to be on record of increasing the police budget. And see, I'll disagree with that. If you want police to have tasers, you've got to give it to them, and it costs money. If you don't want to be on record for voting for more money for the police, well, then you're voting against them having tasers. To me, a lot of this is really based on trying to please your voter base rather than to do your job, which is fundamentally you have to better train your police. You have to equip them with non-lethal force. If you want to cut the police budget, go ahead, but find out what you're cutting.
No, I mean, to be fair, to
Yeah.
be perfectly fair, the city does not control the police budget. The police budget is controlled by a really arcane negotiation process between the FOP and the mayor's office. And
And how does
so,
that happen? Let me interrupt you for a second. How does that happen, that arcane process? And I'll tell you, if you don't know, I'll just tell you.
go ahead.
It's called politics, James. What happens is, no, I'm being completely serious because you're looking for transparency and I'm being transparent. Look, so all of this underneath the table politics is what I'm very much against. So what happens is you have a candidate, that candidate sits down with the FOP, right? And I support the police. I'm not against the FOP or any other union.
Oh,
But what I'm saying,
I'm completely against the FOP. I think
yeah,
McNesby should eat his last
sure,
hoagie and leave town. But
yeah,
yeah.
no, yeah, I got you. But I'm telling you this. The problem for me is in the negotiation of politics between the FOP and the mayoral candidate, because what generally happens is this is where the deal is cut, no matter what the rhetoric or the language. And the biggest problem for me that I see as to why there's a problem, with getting better police service, having a police force that people want and respect, because it does need reforms. It does need to be improved. We cannot simply leave it the way it is. It obviously and definitely needs improvement. The question is, how do we provide police so people are safe, and at the same time streamline it so it's not bloated, and make it efficient, and have the kind of people that we feel very comfortable with, who want to serve and are people that we can trust not to do inadvertent or purposeful harm, right? So that's the responsibility of the employer. But in the negotiation, the candidate will say to the FOP, if you endorse me and give me money, I will cut deals with you. And one of the deals that gets cut typically is that the FOP gets its choice of the third arbitrator, right? So the arbitration process consists of the city chooses one, the FOP representing the police officers chooses the other. There's supposed to be a neutral arbitrator chosen by both, someone both feel is qualified and fair, and will be able to look at each case and make the decisions that is in the best interest of the law and the public and the officers themselves. But giving away that third arbitrator, it has been a political tradition in Philadelphia, and it's something that creates many problems. I would say it's counterproductive, because then when you have someone who has violated the law, who is a rogue officer, who it's the captain and the commanders want to remove from the police force, then that person ends up coming back. And that becomes a problem for the good officers, for the public, for the system itself. But it would not happen if the mayoral candidate said, no, we are going to do a lot of things together, but we will agree to a neutral arbitrator, one that you have confidence and that I have confidence, not someone who's going to screw the police, no, someone who's going to be knowledgeable and fair in the public interest. And that's the beginning of these problems, because one of the things that you're saying is, look at the current problems in our police force. We have a demoralized police force. We're short 1,300 police officers. So when people call 911, sometimes there's only 2 police vehicles in the entire district. They can't get to where they're going. And with the demoralized police force, sometimes they don't want to, which is all a management problem. The next mayor got a huge headache. And so these issues of public safety, protecting people, doing it in a way. So that's why, let's say on a big issue where we disagree, Sherelle Parker has talked about bringing back stop and frisk. I am adamantly opposed to it. I'm a former prosecutor. I would not do that because there is stop and frisk that exists, that already exists when the circumstance arise. But you cannot tell police officers to go to a community and to do things, and if people don't cooperate, to start patting them down, looking for things, because that is a violation of the Constitution. It's a violation of their civil rights. And it's counterproductive in that now the police are breaking the law and people know it. And so they can't be that force that helps the community, that serves the community, if they're breaking the law and violating people. And then after they do that, is the mayor going to stand behind them? Is the mayor going to say, oh no, that was my policy to come down to Malcolm X Park and start, clearing out people and frisking them to lock them up and things like that? No, the mayor throws them under the bus. And so I would not do that. And I think in a debate, she's got to clarify, or backpedal or do something, because we don't need it. It's counterproductive. It's bad. You won't have community policing that way. And you won't get the type of recruits that you want. And we won't build the police force that we can be proud of.
So, I agree with you. Not surprisingly, I've agree. I've said this since I don't know, probably 4, 5, 6 years ago. The problem that the police force has, why it's demoralized, why it's having many of the problems it has right now, isn't just a problem of not being funded, isn't just a problem of not having enough officers on duty. It's a problem. It also isn't just a problem of having too many duties. It's a combination of problems. One of the chief amongst them, I feel personally, is there's a lack of respect for chain of command. There's a lack of proper chain of command in the Philadelphia police force because of the politics that you mentioned. The head of the FOP, John McNesby, for the last, I don't know, 20, 25 years, has been in charge of the Philadelphia police force. He's not commissioner. He's not an elected official. He's just the head of the police union. And he issues directives and commands directly to the police force, which they often follow. Some police members of the police union don't follow those directives, but one of the directives has been essentially a slow work order, which is legit, I suppose, in a union sense. You can slow your roll, you can sandbag to demand changes to your work circumstances, and there are actual grievances. But the reason why we have a arbitration process for the police budget is so that they cannot strike. It completely eliminates their ability to strike. So it's a concession to make it so that they can't strike. Why are we allowing them to sandbag? Why are we allowing the head of the FOP to order them to sandbag? For those that don't understand union speak, sandbagging is when you just don't do your job very quickly. You kind of drag your feet. You do your job, but you don't have to like it. Why are we like that to me is the root of the problem. That to me is the problem with the Philadelphia police in general. How do we fix this? I don't know. I think it's.
I have an answer for you, James.
Go ahead.
You may disagree with me, but I have an answer. And if I were mayor, this is what I do. First of all, I think we're in this situation. So first of all, John McNesby is not all powerful, and we may disagree on that. He is the elected representative of the workforce, the police workforce, and he negotiates the contract. So there may be things in the contract that he says the city is violating. The city told you to this, they're penalizing, and ultimately what you just said, like in negotiating the contract and dealing with the contract, things like that. However, his role is expanded when the city violates the law and violates the legitimate portions of the contract, and when the city is not exercising leadership. In other words, who is responsible for all these things? Well, the mayor is. The mayor is responsible for what happened on 95. The mayor is responsible for what's going on in Kensington. The mayor is responsible, and yet the mayor is letting other people take the blame. The mayor should say, I am the head of this city. I am in charge of all the workforces. I appoint the police commissioner. I provide them instructions on what to do. Here is where I have failed, and here is what I'm going to do to correct that failure. And so for me, what I would do is this. One, I would take responsibility of this police force, and I'm blatantly saying and openly saying that we need a better police force. We need to support good policing, but we need reforms. And those reforms begin with things like not giving away the third arbitrator, so that we can deal with issues where police officers actually should not be on the force. And that has to be backed up by the mayor. In terms of raising morale, they work for the city. They have a sworn duty, and the mayor appoints the commissioner, and hopefully does not simply appoint the entire command staff, but works with the new commissioner, their commissioner, to kind of co-appoint command staff and so forth and so on. And there, as mayor, the duties of the police will be clear. The support for them, who we recruit, and the fact that we do community policing, that we do tell the officers, you shall not break the law. And we stand with you in all of those things. And that we want you to be an engaged officer. And we are going to have like continuing training and things like that. That puts the mayor into a leadership position. It puts the police commissioner into a leadership position where the police can have a lot less anxiety. Like, I am a big proponent of drones, and I've justified that many times in public. In other words, if you are a police officer and you are receiving a call like to get into a life-threatening situation, you're going to arrive with a lot of adrenaline. Why not send a drone, reconnoiter, and come back with the information that you may be hyped up for? Actually not a very, it's not necessary. You're overreacting, or you don't have information. You're operating in the dark. We have a drone to tell you where the hostages are, where the gunman is, where the fire is located, out to a big traffic accident. We know exactly how many emergency vehicles, how many officers, what to do, how to guide traffic. Why not get the information? And it applies to everything else, from traffic jams to L&I investigations to looking at the foundation of bridges to fighting fires. Many things we can do with more information from technology. But again, that has been a constant fight on city council. My whole thing, see, the difference between community policing, let's say, and minimum force training and de-escalation, those are three different things, right? So community policing is where the police know you. You live here. They talk with you. They show up at your religious place, your community group. They walk the beat. They say, hello, James, how are you? You call them and say, hey, listen, I lost my keys. They come and help you. They're not like all, oh my God, you're asking me to help you find your keys, get in your car. No, we're at your service. Their attitude is different. Their bicycle, all that engaged. You see them, they're not a stranger. Community policing, what's important to you? What's not important to you? How do you feel? We want to tailor the police to kind of like what the community wants, where its head's at right now. We're not ready for this. We're going to do that. De-escalation is where we take something and we ratchet it down. So an argument becomes a conversation. A physical altercation turns into an argument. An argument turns into a conversation, de-escalating. As you said, like if there's a vehicle going down the wrong way, if you do stop it, you can just block it in. Take your time, wait for others to arrive, and then deal with it in a slow and careful manner. No need to jump out. It ain't going anywhere. You got all the information. Calm down. Recognize that you are in a situation where your adrenaline is pumping, you're excited, give yourself a breath. And when you step out, don't put yourself in a position of danger. Don't jump into danger. So you got to feel like you pull your gun out. Like, you know, minimum force training. It's when you are in a situation, but instead of simply reacting with muscle memory or just like intuitively, you have an ability to put things into perspective. I don't need to pull my gun out. I have my gun out and I don't need it. I can handle this without the gun. I'm going to protect myself and the gun from being taken. If I get into an altercation, I don't have to crack the guy on the head with this metal pipe here. I'm going to step back. I'm going to just extend my arms, not to shove the guy, just to let them not come near me. In other words, how can I use the least amount of force or no force in a potentially physical confrontation, or one where otherwise I might pull out my gun as a safety measure for me, but end up shooting a person. So these concepts that we're talking about between, let's say, Parker and myself are different. We have said different things. We have done different things in the past. And I, at least on my part, having been in the district attorney's office, having done criminal defense work, having gone to, the state senate about reforming some of the criminal justice laws around evidence ruling the day rather than arcane old, kind of keep them in jail laws. I advocate for these things. I think if we have a better system, I think if you didn't see some of the things that you've seen, you would be more apt to say, okay, yeah, let's have police officers in the park on horses. Let's engage the children. Let's have them at the rec center. Let's make sure people are safe on public transportation, and let's have them in the community and the neighborhood where they're our friends rather than our occupiers or our enemies.
I'm all for all of these things. I think both you and Terrell Parker have very similar views on all of these things, in that they're all necessary. I think you guys have different priorities and different ways to get about them, which is interestingly, it's 11:01. I just want to acknowledge the time, and there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on right before we go.
Sure.
But I just want to say this. One of the reasons I have you on this show, one of the reasons I've talked in person with Sam Oropeza, the reason why, and I've been accused on social media of being like, a Republican. I'm the furthest from a Republican, and you know this, and
I can vouch for that. We agree on some things, and we disagree on many things too.
We disagree on many things, but what I was going to say is, what inspires me, what makes me happy, what makes me hopeful, is that even though we disagree on many things, we disagree usually in the way to get to the same goal. And so I'm glad you're a candidate for mayor. I hope that the conversation is widened and broadened and deepened by your candidacy. And I do hope that you have a good opportunity to win, regardless of whether or not I would endorse you as a mayor.
Yeah.
Real quick, I had a couple of questions in the chat.
Sure.
And a couple of questions. Leading up to this interview, I had I had a group of friends, participate in, like what would you talk about with a Republican running for candidate as a mayor in the most democratic city in the nation? We literally have not had a Republican as mayor since the major rewrite of the city ordinances. The home rule charter was rewritten, and then ever since we've had Democrat mayors. So some of the big things, I I already know like how you've answered these to me in the past, but I think it's more important now as a candidate for mayor to have at least a comment on, say, reproductive health care, um, immigration law, these things that are national issues that are, like they're as Stan Horowitz commented, family planning and healthcare primarily regulated at the state level, not city. Um, you've said similar things to me about other issues that I've brought, to your attention or talked about with you. I think as mayor, it's important to lead, even if these issues aren't regulated by you as a mayor. It's important, that. So just a couple of quick examples. What is your stance on family planning? What do you is abortion care health care? Is it important to recognize the autonomy of women's rights, or is it more important to protect the rights of an unborn child?
Yeah, so as you said, this is not something that generally falls under the mayor's purview, but I like to answer questions. But I don't necessarily answer questions the way people like me to answer because I have my own views, right? My view is this. Me personally, I'm pro-life in the sense I believe that the unborn child is a person and all of that stuff. Uh, abortion is legal in Pennsylvania. There's a process by which we got to that, and as mayor, I respect the process. One of my disagreements with Jim Kenney is when you're elected mayor, you don't start deciding which laws to enforce and not. Just because I like this or I don't like that. What happens is abortion is not a law created in Philadelphia. It is a law created in the state of Pennsylvania and at a higher level of the federal system. And I respect the law. The other part of it is while I have my personal views, you have your personal views. And just as much as I can come to my own conclusions, you come to your conclusions. And I respect your ability as a person to make your own decisions. I say, at least in my case, like, if it were my daughter who came to me, I would say this. One is, we have our values. I've shared my perspective with you, but you make up your own mind. And whatever you decide, I will support you. If you have the baby, we will love the baby. If you make a decision otherwise, we love you. We all going to have to account for ourselves. And that's pretty much where I stand because I don't have, any direct role over this type of thing as mayor or in city council.
So I think where this becomes important are is the kind of the Republican Party has a reputation, whether deserved or not deserved, for affecting these issues on a national level by dissecting states and localities as much as they can and finding inroads with friendly communities and making those communities more. Gerrymandering is a big part of it. Designing districts for people to have power in, and thereby getting a bunch of rules and regulations passed that don't meet up with the state, or thereby affecting the state law. Pennsylvania is split 50-50 practically for who's in control of the state at any given point. It's and rightfully so, I suppose. We have a large rural community, and we have a large two large cities, and we have a lot of liberal and very conservative people all across the state. While I agree with you, it's a personal choice, and I appreciate your stance on that. What happens if the state passes an anti-abortion law? Does that come down to this? the city of Philadelphia fights with the state constantly for education funding, for gun control, for many issues that are state based but shouldn't be, many issues that are locally based but shouldn't be, many issues that are even federally based but the state of Pennsylvania, as
I'm
a
not
general rule, doesn't
sure.
agree with.
I'm not sure that I can, like, I'm trying to think, how can I agree with you? Like, when the city passes these ordinance on a women's right to choose, they are meaningless ordinances. You could call them symbolic. I call them like misleading. Like, we have no authority over it, and I don't vote for things we have no. I'm an attorney, and I would hang my head in shame if I started voting for things that were illegal, that I knew they were illegal. They're just improper. So, I mean, yeah, the city has a lot of rhetoric about stuff. It talks about stuff. Is it the city or is it the city's politicians? Like, okay, I can understand things. For example, there's a legitimate role as mayor. We do not enforce, let's say, immigration laws. That's not part of what the city does. However, we do enforce criminal laws. And if someone, whether they're a citizen or immigrant or a non-immigrant or an undocumented person, has committed a crime, yes, I cooperate with the federal government, the state government, and any other government in apprehending or dealing with a criminal, a violent criminal. Now, if we're talking about you got to hand over someone who did like a minor offense for deportation, that's really not my role, nor am I doing it, because I am dealing with city issues, and I need to have and want to have a good relationship with all the people in our city, including those who are not documented in our city, like the productive, honest people. I certainly support them. I hope to get their immigration situation straightened out. That can happen. I did immigration law as an attorney, certainly seen situations where people were not documented one day and then later on they became documented. But whatever they are, they should live well. They should get a good education, have an opportunity. I have different positions than, let's say, the National Party on many issues. And as you know, I have certainly had my battles with the local party on local issues like the parking authority and where the money goes, and it doesn't fund the schools like it's. But I've done the bills. I mean, my bills to take back control of the parking authority to fund the schools was defeated in council. By whom? By Democrats. So to me, a lot of the issues that come up, about national things, I'm willing to talk about them in the sense that I'd like to be transparent, but I'd like to go back to where we are in the city of Philadelphia. Like people will be surprised that Democratic council members, including Parker, voted against taking back, the control of the parking authority, specifically to fund public schools. Now, why would they do that? I couldn't even get an audit done. They tabled my audit. It's because they're all involved in the operation of the parking authority for the money, for the contracts, and it doesn't go to the schools.
Fair enough, and I agree with you. I agree. Ostensibly, I think I agree with you in one sense. I disagree in another. I agree that these bills, like say passing a bill saying we're a sanctuary city, has very little impact on the actual situation of immigrants in the city. Because then what happens is we get in national arguments with governors of other states. We get Greg Abbott of Texas, and we get Florida sending buses here. Greg Abbott's going to New York tomorrow. If I was mayor of New York, I would arrest Greg Abbott for human trafficking.
So let me say this because I want to be clear. So I am a proponent of immigrants. I'm a proponent of an immigrant-friendly city, as I am a veteran-friendly city. The issue about sanctuary city to me is this: people don't understand what it is. So it sounds like we're a sanctuary city. When you're in trouble, come to Philadelphia, we'll save you. And that's not what happens. A sanctuary city is an executive order that only says two things. There's only two things on it. You can pull it up and read it. When the federal government wants us to hand over in a planned way someone that is in police custody or in our prison system who has committed a crime. we do not cooperate. Now, again, if that crime is murder, rape, or other things, we do not cooperate, and I will cooperate. So I do not agree with that. Oftentimes, the people in our custody are terrorizing and abusing their very own immigrant community, many of whom are undocumented like them and can't go to the authorities. And therefore, we do have to protect them. But when we're talking about, someone coming in to get some guy who was making salad at the restaurant, no, I don't cooperate with that. I think that's a waste of money and it's a waste of our time. And I want people who are undocumented to go to our police and say, I've been wronged, I've been harmed, I've been threatened, I've been sexually harassed, all those things. We want to work with them because we have to remove crime. And
I
I
think
work very
that's. I
well.
mean, to be fair, I think that's a judgment call that the DA does make and has made pretty
But the
appropriately.
DA, yeah, but the DA doesn't get into this. This is at the police level. In other words,
Well, and it
uh,
shouldn't be though. Why? So, I mean, I know the executive order that you're talking about making
yeah,
Philadelphia a sanctuary city, and what it doesn't do is it doesn't stop the prosecution of criminals. It doesn't stop the district attorney or the police from apprehending criminals or charging them with crimes. All it does is stop the direct access of the federal government to city-owned data. That's how it should be. The city shouldn't be
well,
freely
here's
sharing
the first
its.
thing. Yeah, no, it prevents, like, in other words, if we have someone in our custody, let's say in our prison or at our roundhouse, who is a convicted murderer in another country and has been convicted and who is wanted in another state, the federal government will notify us. We're sending our officers to properly identify the person, that's who it is, to then pick them up, to then take them into federal custody, and our city lets them go without making these arrangements. And I would make the
I don't.
arrangements.
I disagree that it 100% of the time does that because it doesn't. I know there have been cases.
100% of the time. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Look, when these are minor cases, I'm on board. Look, it's not the role we do. But anytime we get into like violent crimes, murder, those type of aggressive, because we don't want another victim someplace else. A rapist, murder. We don't want that. And so, in the process, they will have their rights. They don't just simply lose their rights because we don't do the immigration law. We don't do deportations. We don't do the federal custody things. We don't do those type. We don't do extradition. That is handled by the federal government. And for us to not cooperate, to me, is problematic.
So, two more quick things if you have the time. I apologize for
Yes, I
running
do.
late.
I do.
Public schools and education. Penn Ridge School District adopted the 1776 curriculum with Jordan Adams and his third-party consulting firm Vermillion proposed it. They're from Florida. The 1776 curriculum is a very nationalistic, for lack of a better word, curriculum. It basically teaches the high points of U.S. history, very supportive of police, military, etc. Very yeah, nationalistic. I don't have any other word for it. It's just kind of for people your age and even to some extent people my age. It's what we grew up with learning in U.S. history was. It's the highlights, the good things that the country has done without any context for the bad things that were going on at the same time. Um, and this seems to be an area where your policies would have an effect. It is a national issue. It's also a state issue, but it's also a local issue because school boards obviously adopt
Board
their
is appointed by
own.
the mayor.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the school board is appointed by the mayor. So I would have, as mayor, pretty large impact on this issue, and which is education. So one, I'm not for any of that type of thing. What I look at is there's state requirements on education, and then we have a school district, which is the entire city of Philadelphia. A board should be appointed, and the board should focus on achieving what the state standards are in writing, in reading, in arithmetic, in science, and all that stuff, supplemented by building the person and supporting them when they do not have enough wealth and home upbringing and choices, to put more resources into the community, to coordinate that with our libraries and our rec centers, to change the hours so they're more convenient, to make them safe. But when it comes to, just like I said, I don't want to have a arts a arts fund run by politicians. I like education being left to educators. I like teachers to teach, administrators to administrate, and I will divide things that way. If it were up to me, I did a bill that would take away the mayor's 9 appointment powers, 9 appointments, and basically have 5 elected by the people and 4 appointed by the mayor. One school board member elected in one of 5 zones, that divide up the city, and sitting on the school board for the entire school district. So for me, I find too much work to be done dealing with building safety, with equal access to resources, curriculum, developing a level of equity where there is none. I find the entire school district to be in gross violation of the Constitution, and to be a basically discriminatory entity, and one that is unsafe, one where we're losing teachers to crime, where students do not look forward to going to school, and where teachers are underpaid, and they don't have an ability to expect, like, to be able to make a career for themselves here in the city. And again, if they're purchasing required school items, that's a huge problem for me. It just underlies the entire lack of transparency and performance of this school district. So, for me, I'm looking at, the fundamentals of education, people putting good people in and letting them do what they do. That's what they do. The mayor makes the appointments, gives them an overall mission, but it's not my job to get involved in picking curriculum and things like that.
Uh, so this is slightly off topic, but related to what you just said. Mayorships are often, a task of kind of assigning out, jobs. Delegation is an important part of a mayorship. Is this an area where you work with somebody like Helen Gim, or one of the progressive or democratic folks who are very education focused?
Yeah, look, we have our disagreements for sure. I disagree with you on certain things. I disagree with on my friend Stan Horowitz, who is supporting me. He's a super progressive, and with people like Helen Kim. However, it's good to disagree. We don't want David O to be the mayor and set like education. Like, we'll get a diversity of people. I'd like to hear from people and have their influence, because we're educating children. And I think, the primary thing is we provide for them a variety of things. We have to provide it on an equal basis, that people have a level of a level playing field and choices, because some are going to be musicians, some are going to be construction workers, and some are going to be doctors. But we help them to be fulfilled. It has to be an uplifting experience. It should be challenging, and they have to be safe. And then we have to provide all this to them in a way that is not only fair, but is, number one, realistic to where their situation is, and compensates for the past denial of of equal educational opportunities, which is a violation of our state constitution. So I want to deal with that. And by the way, I want to be engaged with the school district on a very intimate basis. I'm not interfering. I don't want to be like sitting there telling them what to do. What I want to do is I want to have regular meetings with them. I want to see how to support the people in the school district, how we're going to get more money in, what are we going to do to clean up the place, protect it, things like that. And the same for community college. As I've done bills, as you know, I've fought with the council administration for intentionally underfunding community college. And it is a waste of a tremendous resource that should be performing far better. I think we've underfunded them like about $320 million, something like that. I mean, so what it could be, what it should be, it just isn't. And that's a detriment. And then look, then all of a sudden the mayor says it's going to be free. Well, that's completely unsustainable. To me, it's complete politics in the sense that you're overcharging students now. They're only supposed to be charged in total 33% of the total operating budget. You're charging them 55%. And you've been underfunding, and all of a sudden you're going to make it free. That's going to last for as long as you're mayor, and then the next mayor is going to have to do something. And to me, this is the problem. Like, make it affordable, make it inexpensive, but make it good quality and extend it out. You can always provide scholarships, but don't do something you can't sustain unless you just make it worse and worse and worse.
So one other thing that I really want to get to today before we part ways, affordable housing, and by extension, the tiny homes projects in Philadelphia, Sixers Arena, Airbnbs. Can we build our way out? You know, one of the other conservative candidates for Philadelphia mayor, who's since dropped out, Alan Dom, I would consider him most of the time a Republican candidate. In most cities, I believe he would have been a Republican candidate, just not here. But he's a property owner. He's a developer. He owns a lot of property around the city. A lot of folks were looking forward to his candidacy because he has ideas about affordable housing, about housing in general, and housing helps end homelessness, helps end gun violence. Housing security is one of the leading factors in crime, as well as food security. When people are insecure, they just tend to act out, which, I wanted to go into today, but I'll just make mention of the fact that, the increase in violence has been global. And it's been global amongst all age groups. There's, in fact, a report that just came out that we're losing teachers as a nation because violence in classrooms is increasing, K through 12. All the way across the board. Students who were never violent before or didn't have a history of discipline problems suddenly facing expulsion. And administrations reacting to that rather than figuring out how to deal with it. I think we have a similar problem with gun violence and violence in general in the city of Philadelphia. We need to figure out how to deal with the root of the problem, which is the pandemic and insecurity in general, both economic and housing and food. But we can get into that at another time. I'm interested in your take on affordable housing because of the 76ers Arena project. The developers of the 76ers Arena have promised a few things, such as affordable housing units involved with the project and ways to kind of mitigate the community pushback against the project. And I know that you're a big supporter of and supported by the Asian American Pacific Islander community in the Chinatown area, and have weighed in on this project a couple of times. I think relatively neutrally, to be honest. Your stance on it, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, seems to be that though the project would probably be valuable, we need to also address the community and make sure that the community weighs in on the
Well,
project.
yeah. So actually, what I've said is it's a bad location, and it's not really a good idea. And I'm really challenged to understand how it would work. But I will wait to see, the actual plan in writing. My big problem is this is a very amorphous plan. It changes with the wind. They just have to draw a new picture. Now they put like a luxury housing on top of it because nothing is in writing. So to me, it's completely like, I don't know, fake. Like, why announce this plan? You have no architectural plans, you have no parking studies, no traffic studies. You're in an area that has things like Jefferson University Hospital, medical center. Like, so typically, if you put an arena there and you're going to do concerts, you're going to have to show us like you have an ability to do concerts, because outside of the concerts and the games, it becomes a dead area. And now you're disrupting the entire not just Chinatown, you're disrupting the entire area. And I don't exactly see why this is a good idea, putting it there, and the fact that we're developing an existing arena site down in South Philadelphia. But, show us your plans. Well, because they've not showed any plans, nothing in writing, and because the way they've rolled it out and the way they pitted one group of people against the other, mostly African Americans and Asian Americans, like pitting them against each other, I've said it's been a very negative and divisive process. And it just seems like anytime they want to add something to get more positive press, they just add something new like housing on top of it. I always suspected there was a luxury housing component to this entire project, but it's so opaque. Like nobody actually knows what's going on there. So I've come out against the project in the sense that, listen, the way you've done it is so suspect. It's a bad area. You have opposition from the community, not just one, several, and people are unsure what to do in the area now because it's so far out when they're actually going to do anything that you may be stifling investment and other things, and they have a lot of things they're saying. And now, by the way, it's not affordable housing. I don't see how that's affordable housing. It's and that's the problem. You can call something affordable, it's not affordable. Affordable to me is something that someone in Philadelphia and the median household income is $40,000. So someone making $40,000 a year, getting a mortgage, can actually purchase the condo or the home or whatever it is, or afford to rent. So for me, your viewers may not know that I think in 2018 I introduced a bill to increase the housing trust fund, the funding, from 14 to 17 million a year, which is nothing, to 64 to 67 million a year by putting $50 million directly into the housing trust fund for affordable housing every year. And it's probably should be more like 100 million every year for affordable housing. Now, affordable housing, the second part is we have to stop putting our money into major developments, which are really luxury housing or high-end housing, and sticking some quote affordable units that nobody can afford. The money should actually be spent
Well,
in those.
interestingly, I think that the when we I want to know, you bring up a point that I didn't think about asking a candidate for mayor, but I think it's important. As the primary enforcer of the law, how does a mayor's office deal with a developer who promises
I don't give them
240?
money. I cut them off. No, no. I listen. I've answered this question many times. I introduce a bill. We have laws, and then we have contracts, and then developers violate it blatantly and come back for more, and our city keeps giving to him. Why? Because it's politics. Somewhere underneath that is probably some political contributions and all kind of other things which are absolutely corrupt. And what I'm saying is this: one, there are laws that are violated constantly. There are also agreements and contracts, including using neighborhood labor, using minority and women in doing these projects, and that are just completely ignored and violated. Minority and female contractors are contacted to put in a bid with them, and it's the last they hear of it. When the money goes out, they never get anything. And how can we have this time and time again? I have put in a bill, and it passed, signed into law, that if you violate these contracts, we withhold payment. We withhold payment. And people have said to me, you'd really withhold payment on like a major multi-million-dollar project? Absolutely. It isn't until someone gets crushed that they understand that we are serious about this. And as mayor, if you're coming to me and the city and you are signing agreements and you are getting tax benefits and all that, and you just go out and commit fraud on us, we will prosecute you. You will not be paid. This will not be something that is allowed. It's atrocious that this goes on year after year. People are helpless. They've been completely screwed, violated, and our city allows it. They go to their elected officials and they get nothing. And that will end when I'm mayor.
I appreciate a hardline stance against developers. I mean, not necessarily against developers, but against fraud, perpetrated against the city. Like, why, like, I'm a mixed ethnicity person. I'm always saying how, like, as a business person, I have to operate way more above the board than I see people in my same industries, get away with on a daily basis. It's reassuring to hear somebody say, okay, we're going to stop letting them get away with this kind of stuff. And
by the way, you will know it's true. They are not supporting me for mayor. I come in mayor, they're getting dropped. Like, in other words, if you do what you're supposed to, no problem. Bid all you like, do all the projects you like. But if you, by reputation and by history, have been a fraudster, someone who has just gotten money and scammed the government, you will not be on any list to get anything anymore.
So, final question, and I'm really harping on your time, and I apologize. And I think any audience here is still with us. I hope you're still with us, because this conversation has been good, I feel, personally. I've gleaned a lot more information than I feel that we've gotten from the campaign thus far. Not to anybody's, it's nobody's fault that we haven't gotten that information. It's just that we don't usually have forums like this with candidates who are willing to respond to questions. And I think that's a problem in general in how, campaigns are run nowadays. I really appreciate you for answering questions. We've invited Sherelle Parker on the show a couple of times. We haven't had a response, but I still invite Sherelle Parker to come on the show, answer similar questions, and have a similar conversation with me. I feel like I would disagree as much with Sherelle Parker's stances on things as I disagree with yours, and it's unfortunate. The final question, I guess, comes down to, you as a candidate, in order to win, need to assemble a rather large kind of conglomeration of different parties who would be interested in voting for David O. Some of those are progressives like me, Stan. Some of those are people like Walter Bittenbeck. Some of those are activists who were hardcore for GIM or hardcore for the former comptroller. Some of them are Republicans. Some of them are people like Samora Preza. Some of them are hardcore Republicans that, think that the election is stolen. How do you assemble that conglomeration of people that don't necessarily all agree with you? Where do you find common ground with folks like me who are ultra progressive, believe in this. I think, to be quite honest, I think we should disassemble the police force and build it back up again, just like Camden did. I don't think that the situation can be reformed. And every day I look at the news, I see more and more people who are, sworn duty police officers being found to have committed crimes, and that's just the small percentage of people who are like properly investigated by the police themselves, because they're the only people that investigate the police. So, I aside from me disagreeing with you on that, there's ultra conservatives who I interact with regularly on social media who actually agree with me. They think that the police force isn't doing a good job, and it's from a different perspective. They think, hey, we need to have our police force. That's my battery notice. Don't worry about it. I'll fix it. We need to have our police force, revamped because it's not, nobody respects the police, and they don't complete enough convictions, etc. How do we resolve that? How do we assemble a group of people who believe the same things, but believe them for different reasons?
Yeah, so I've assembled that team, and it is let's say, if you put it on paper, it would be very difficult, very complicated. But me, for example, I have worked with almost every one of our immigrant communities. I just normally do that, and I did that before I was elected. So I will say it's always shocking to me how few politicians and elected officials engage with communities that they think don't vote. Like, if they don't vote, well, first of all, you don't know if they vote or not, but let's say you believe they don't vote, but okay, why not go see them? Why not help them? So whether it's the Brazilian community, and I did the flag raising resolution, the Brazilian Day in Philadelphia, the Mexican community down in South Philly, the Chinese community, the Uzbek Kyrgyz community, the Belarusian community, the Georgian community, our Liberian, our Haitian. I interact with all the communities because I'm an at-large council person. But I was the only veteran on council, so I quite involved with the veterans community. So I of course get contacted by them. I have an interest in the global economy and the creative arts economy, the innovative economy. I deal with people there. So just in the course, I deal with a lot of people. And when it comes to what people want, they want basically the same thing. They want a safe neighborhood. They want a safe community. They want a clean environment. They want a good school. They want good jobs. They want opportunities. They want to grow. They want to live a good life. And so, delivering that and how to deliver it is where we agree. We may not agree on the extent. So one is they might want to do, something in a different way, but it comes down to this: who else is doing anything? And so if I'm the only person dealing with, let's say, reforming the Department of Human Services, they're flocking to me. If I recognize that their children are being removed from their families, for no good reason at all, which is illegal, then I'm going to fight for that. I've dealt with people that were so I have interesting support, including people that are incarcerated and returning citizens, because I understand that there are, ramifications to our city when people are incarcerated. We have 375,000 residents of Philadelphia who have been incarcerated. I start with this: what happens to their children? How are they traumatized? Things. So we have to end that cycle. If someone someone is incarcerated for 20 years, what is the likelihood that their children growing up in the same environment are going to be impacted? So I deal with those things. So I have Democrats for David O. I have progressives. I have very conservative folks on board. I have business people. I have people who are very disenfranchised, but I have championed their cause. And what we're all looking for is we're looking for a city where we can all be us. A city we can be proud of. It has to be, it has to be a city where people can't, they know what to expect, and what they expect is good, and they want to see improvements. So, kind of underlying that is the fact that if a person is only performing at half the level that they could perform, if they can only be half the human being they want to be, and it is because of bad policies or unfairness or discrimination or sexism or whatever it is, those are all things that have to be removed. Because when people reach their full potential in a city like Philadelphia, we all benefit. So we want to empower as many people as we can to be the very best person they can be. And then they love our city, and they want their kids and grandkids and everyone else, to grow up in our city. But then who wouldn't want to come and visit here? And the more visitors we have, the less we need from our own citizens. I'd like to reduce the burdens on our citizens. I'd like to reduce the property tax and other types of things. I'd like to decrease inflation in that manner so that people can do more with their money and have a better life. So, whether they're Korean immigrants or, third generation Philadelphians, whether they're white, black, Asian, or whatever you have, Latino or whomever, they have the same goals, but people want to be treated, as people. They want to be treated with a level of courtesy and respect. And I think our government, whether it's the police, as you said, or it's our bureaucrats, or it's the water department, or it's whomever, we're not doing that. We have to do a better job of doing that. And I want to put in the technology and the leadership that will make us all proud to do our jobs. And I think the benefit is, when I talk about the Department of Human Services, nobody signed up to be a social worker to be hated. Like, nobody wants to be the social worker that everybody's afraid of. DHS is coming. No, they purposely chose a profession where they knew they weren't going to make that much money, but they wanted to get in the thick of things and help people. And I want them to be that hero that they want to be. I want them to be proud of being from DHS. And when DHS shows up, people are like, thank God DHS is here. They're going to help my family, help my kids. They're going to provide us the service and the information we need. And because of that, and other things, for example, and like, how many people are undervalued because they don't speak English well? Well, they speak another language. How about that? They speak two languages. How about they have a different culture? And if we would make their community safe and clean, how many people, would be, a tourist? For example, I always say, like, you can get anything you want in the suburbs. You can get Mexican food, you can get Puerto Rican food, you can get Chinese food, whatever you want. But you can only come to Philadelphia to get that authentic environment, the community, to be, within a Mexican restaurant, in a Mexican section of Philadelphia, in a Puerto Rican section. If you got rid of the crime and all that stuff, you would have people. It's an economic engine. It's wonderful for the community. They could sell things. They could do things. You could do international exchange and things like that. We are stifling our own city by not recognizing the value of human beings in our city. And that draws people to want to see a new kind of city. And that is who makes up my campaign, basically demographic. I have a very diverse group of people supporting me. And look, in a city that's 7-1 Democrat, look, a huge portion of who supports me are Democrats.
Yeah. The question came about, and thank you for all of that. I think that it's valuable that to know that you support, making the city comfortable for all of its residents and all the constituents, whether they like to vote for you or not. It's important to you, and I think that's something I've always seen from you, is that it's important to you that they feel protected and comfortable and able to participate in the city. The question came about because you are a Republican. You're in the Republican Party. You have regular disagreements with the party, both locally and nationally. However, like I guess the question really is, does the hesitancy, does the concern that people have that you would support, say, anti-abortion policies or support anti-immigration policies or support anti-LGBTQ policies, does that make sense to you as a candidate? Like, how do you respond to knowing that that is a concern of people who are voters?
Yeah, I mean, we're a 7-1 Democratic city, and so there are a lot of Democrats, and many of them will be very concerned that, here's a person, he's a Republican, and therefore, what is the chances that this person is going to, be in alignment with Republican policies or national agenda that I disagree with, that they, as a voter, disagree with. And that's a legitimate and fair question. Like everyone, I will say, if you're looking for change, it's probably not coming from within the political machinery. It's probably not coming from a Democrat. It's probably coming from an outsider like me, and I happen to be as much an outsider as can be. I'm for the change. And you'd have to look kind of at, like what I say and what I do. And I am a person who generally tries to be transparent because I know I have some, different views. I'm what I would call a Lincoln Republican. Very much fond of Abraham Lincoln and the perspectives about, who people are and the importance of the Constitution and having a legal document. But I also challenge them because one of the biggest problems I find in the city of Philadelphia is, first I say, look, it's perfectly fine to dislike Republicans or be suspicious, but who give a person a pass simply because they're a Democrat. Because we have a lot of Democrats doing a lot of things they like either, but they care for them or they don't challenge them. As I said, on many of the bills and things we just talked about, I'm the only one who introduced it. And it was defeated by my colleagues. So, and then they did not introduce something themselves.
Yeah.
I see my internet is a bit unstable. So
Yeah,
I
you
hope.
had a little glitch there. That's okay. I think we got the overall message. And yeah, I mean, yes. And there are people, like me, like other progressives who definitely do push back against, this is why I think that I would disagree as much with Sherelle Parker as I disagree with you. Sherelle Parker is a Democratic machine candidate. She has very deep connections with the Democratic Party and the National Party. She can get things done at the state level because of those connections. However, those connections at the same time are the connections that created the hard on crime, tough on crime neoliberal Democrat, space, and that also shut down the progressive argument all the time. So for me, it's kind of a toss up. To be quite honest, it's not.
Yeah.
I feel like the one thing that this election has lost is any representation for those of us who are progressives, which is in this city is a lot larger than of a voting bloc than in most cities. Obviously, not 51% of the Democratic vote, but also quite obviously about 25% of the Democratic vote, which, as you mentioned, is 70% of the overall voting bloc. So, I just wonder, how do we support those who are progressive, that have progressive politics, that, I'm a 40 mid 40s father of a 2-year old who, is an entrepreneur, and I own 3 businesses. I'm the kind of person that most cities want to see staying in the city of Philadelphia. Like, if I live here, this is a vibrant city. If I don't, this isn't a vibrant city. How do we support the people like me who want this city to be better in a specific way, in a more inclusive way, in a way that national politics threatens? And how do we ignore the R behind your name, and vote for David O?
Well, I think the biggest obstacle to people like you is actually the Democratic Party, the entrenched Democratic Party that you can't get past. You can always come to an election with a Republican in a general election, but the issue is, can you get past the Democratic Party machinery? Because that's not really based on the issues. That's just based on kind of like the party machinery. And it's a true for the Republican Party in other places where the Republican Party is entrenched. If you're a Republican, how do you get past the kind of like party boss mentality? How do you bring issues forward? Because it's no longer about issues. It's about where you are in the line and what you do and whether you agree with maintaining the status quo. If you maintain the status quo, you're their candidate. And so, for people who are looking for change, whatever the reason is, but I will say I think most progressives are unsatisfied with how things are. They want change. They want more dramatic change. It's not the Republicans who are blocking you, not in Philadelphia. It is the Democratic machinery. And to break that up, you should just vote on the issues and vote for the candidate that's going to bring about the issues, because I'm probably more disruptive to the status quo than Parker is, right? I would say not probably, I am. And that is why, like, kind of like who aligns with her are people that you would think would align with a Republican. They don't. They're not aligning with me. And, there's a reason they align with the status quo candidate and not with someone who is going to basically do things that in their mind is radical. It's not radical. Like, I'm following the law. I'm not allowing for fraud and other type of things and unconstitutional things and cronyism, and therefore I don't have their support, and I don't want their support. I'm going to, as mayor, clean house and give us a fresh start, like we should. I think that's music to a lot of people, including progressives. They may not want me to have a second term, but I think they do like the fact that we're going to shake things up and disrupt things enough to get in front of people on the issues, on the merits, and then it's up to the people.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking such a long amount of time to talk with me. I
Yeah, no,
really
thank you.
appreciate it. I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation I have.
I
Um,
always do, James. I always do.
and again, I really thank you. It's not easy to get access to our elected officials. I've always said that the city of Philadelphia is one of the easier places to get access to our elected officials, because you can walk around City Hall and run
Yeah.
into pretty much any candidate. But the pandemic kind of shut that down. And I would love to see that come back. I would love to be able to walk around City Hall again if I have a project and be like, hey, David O, I don't know anything about you, but are you interested in supporting this arts project?
Yeah.
And I hope that your campaign goes well, and that you have again, an impact on the campaign and the ability to bring up conversation, which I think we all need. Any last thoughts? Anything you want to say to the audience before you go, and then I'll outro the show.
No, well, thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, I'm at davido.com. And I do get around the city. If you see me, say hello. Feel free to ask me any questions. And then, please vote. Vote for a better city.
Thank you again, David, for joining me. I'm going to go one up on me. Feel free to stick around if you'd like. I'll have a couple minutes after the show, and I would love to talk to you. Thank you so much. And thank you to my audience as well. I really appreciate it. Obviously, we ran so long that my camera battery died, so I switched to my backup camera here, and I appreciate you sticking around even when we have technical glitches. I'm a small producer. I'm mostly a one-man band. I have an associate producer, Meg Angelino. She's great. She does a lot of the legwork for me, and she's very appreciated. But these are the kinds of reports, the interviews, the access that I fought for my entire time in living in the city of Philadelphia for people to have. Individuals and small organizations need access to the politicians so that we can report on things like the mayoral election without interference of editorial boards or the lack of interest of the general media, the constraints that I would have if I was advertiser supported, etc. So please subscribe on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, wherever you happen to be watching this, on multiple platforms if you like. If you hit the subscribe button, you'll get notifications when I go live. We'll have more election coverage as the election comes up. We're covering topics of interest for the election as we approach it every week. And we hope that you appreciate these topics and would like to hear more. And if you'd like to support us more than that, please consider joining our Patreon, patreon.com/LightThiefProductions. We have support levels as little as $1 a month. And we appreciate any support you can give. That support directly helps us bring you interviews like this and news and information from Philadelphia, the nation, and around the world. So join us again next week. It might be a little bit later than 10 a.m. I'm actually going to talk to Timothy right as soon as I jump off of this broadcast about the timing of next week. But you'll get notifications if you subscribe. So subscribe on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, and or YouTube, and to let you know when we do go live next week. So enjoy the rest of your week, everybody.